All right, lesson 8 and 9 both cover DNS. We're going to kind of cover both of them today. DNS is probably the most important part of networks nowadays. Anyone know what DNS does, basically? Name to an IP address is exactly what it is. You type in google.com, it translates to a number and goes to the correct server. That's exactly what DNS is. Okay. Now, do we need DNS? Well, if you know the numbers, you don't need DNS. It's kind of like you don't need a phone book if you memorize everybody's number. All right, so let's talk about DNS zones first. Okay. DNS, domain naming system, or domain naming system or name system. Okay. It's used on TCP/IP networks, like it says. It's used to translate names to numbers pretty easily. URLs to IP addresses. Everybody knows what a URL is: Uniform Resource Locator or a web address. Okay. All right. It says early TCP performed name resolution using a host file. I don't know. Y'all know we have host files, don't you? I'm going to show you the one on my local machine here. If I was to go to C, Windows, System 32. Drivers, etc. You see I have a host file in here. If I was to open that up with like Notepad or something, what you would see is some entries. Okay, this is a sample host file, and here is an example. So if someone was to type in rhino.acme.com, it could translate to this number. x.acme.com could go to a different number. The pound signs means they're commented out. Those are samples. But you could very easily put in everything. Okay? Let me do something here. I'm going to do NS lookup for google.com. Okay? And it gives me a bunch of numbers. We're going to learn why there's multiple numbers here in a minute. But I'm going to copy one of them. Mark, and I'm going to take this number right here, which is Google, as we can say or see. Now I'm going to put it in here. Now I'm going to say that is yahoo.com. Okay, I'm going to save this. Hopefully, I'm logged in as administrator so I can save it. So what I basically did was I told my computer that yahoo.com is this address. Well, that address right there. So now I'm going to bring up my web browser, and I'm going to type in yahoo.com, and if all goes well, I'll get great. Okay, I'll tell you why. It's because I didn't put the www on it. Naturally. Let me fix that. I just told it straight yahoo.com. I forgot Yahoo translates to www.yahoo.com. Now if I save this, I will also have to ipconfig. Now let me try it again. If I type in yahoo.com, watch it still go there. Yeah, it's cached. Oh, it's HTTPS. Let me pick an easier one to do. I'm going to do rose.edu because Yahoo does some weird stuff. It also could be, I'll tell you something in a second. If I go to rose.edu, I get Google. Okay. I typed in Rose and it went to Google. Okay. So if I typed in www.rose.edu, you also actually typed rose.edu, it goes straight to Google. Okay. So what happened is the first place your computer looks for name resolution is the host file. It looks here first. Because this was the very first version of DNS. It's kind of like the phone book in the sky. Remember, when this internet first started, there was like 3 computers. Stick them in a file. But now we have way too many to put in a file. So, as this is, well, it's actually the second place to check for name to number resolution. Everybody know where the first place is? In your own cache. Have you been there before? If you go to a website, it's going to remember it for a certain length of time. Okay, so that's why I had to do the IP flush over here to clean out my cache. But so there's actually viruses out there that will make entries in here. If you have something like Spybot Search and Destroy on, you'll see it'll actually go in this file, and any bad domain that it knows of, it'll actually put an entry in here for you. So if there was, myvirus.com, it would automatically put it in there and put it to an invalid address. So if you accidentally clicked on a virus that went to that link, it would no longer function. So host file, very handy, but there's viruses out there that use it as well. There's a known virus out there that watches for you to surf to your bank. Say you had Bank of America. So it waits till you go to bankofamerica.com, and then it puts a new entry in here for bankofamerica.com to a fake copy site. So next time you go to bankofamerica.com, you're actually going to a mirror site, which is fake, and they steal your credit card information. So this file can be an issue. We had an issue years ago when we had a couple sites. Remember when MySpace was real popular a few years ago? That's before Facebook. Everybody did it, and we had two secretaries downstairs who basically did MySpace all day long, every day. You ask them to do something for you, and they were busy on MySpace. So I got permission from the school. I said, can I put a host record in there? So I put in MySpace's name with Rose State's number. So they type in myspace.com and it goes straight to Rose State. And the amazing thing was they never complained. Could you just imagine, hey, I'm trying to surf MySpace during work, and I can't get redirected back to my job. But I also had a guy, Josh Posey, who worked for me at the time. He would surf Reddit and Failblog a lot. So I made a fake website. Well, not a fake, a website. Homepage said, Josh, get to work. Then anytime I catch him doing something, I put an entry in his machine for whatever websites he was going to that put into that address. So he'd go there one day and it'd work fine. Next day he'd come in and, Josh, get to work. He's like, damn it. So you can do a lot with this. You can very easily fake your kids out. But what you have to do is make sure you have the whole name. Like Yahoo actually has mail.yahoo.com, chat.yahoo.com. There's 1,000 entries for yahoo.com. And plus they had HTTPS, so it caused an issue there as well.
We were training for Cyber Patriot. You made a machine where they had like Kitten War.
Right. It was LOL Cats or something. Yes.
Yeah, it's like Kitten War or something.
Yeah, so you can very easily route people. And it's not hard to fix. You go in and edit this file. Go in and just delete these entries. Okay, just put them on and save it. So it's kind of a cool feature. You can actually do it at your house. Do it at your work. Just be careful. You might get in trouble. So the first thing it does is checks the host file. Okay? Well, really the second thing. Okay. But can you imagine if the entire world used the host file? One host file. And they had listed every computer in the entire world. That would suck.
Hell of a file.
Yeah, it'd be a hell of a file. And how would it ever be updated? It's like when I first got out of the military. I am recording this, aren't I? Yes, I am. Okay, good. First got out of the military, I got a part-time job as an ISP, Internet Service Provider. They actually contacted me and said, we need you. And I went over there, and it turns out the guy sold it to his girlfriend, and it was a girlfriend that was robbing the blind, and her lawyer new boyfriend. And that was it. No technicians whatsoever. So they said, there you go, Ken, it's all yours. So it was crazy, but I had to manage the entire thing, and we ended up buying out a ISP out of Tulsa called Galstar Solutions. They went bankrupt, so we bought them out, and we supported nationwide dial-up. Remember when we had nationwide dial-up? If you sign up for like AOL, you could dial in from anywhere. You just had to find the local dial-up numbers. Well, we had the same system. But their DNS system updated twice a week. It updated on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's it. So if you want to make a change to the global DNS for AT&T, you had to either update it on Tuesday or Thursday. And you had to have it in 48 hours prior. So if you want to update it on Tuesday, you had to have it in and approved by Sunday. Make sense? Well, we actually got it and updated all the entries in time for the Tuesday update. But then we found there was some issues with it. So we fixed the issues real quick and submitted it on Wednesday morning. Well, that wasn't 2 days prior to Thursday, so we actually ended up going an entire week with invalid numbers. Nationwide dial-up service, it sucked. We all had cell phones at the time. We still have cell phones now. We were getting so many phone calls. I still remember we're sitting there in the office just looking at our phones. It rang, go to voicemail. Ring, go to voicemail. Ring. It's like it couldn't do any work because it sucks so bad. So DNS is literally the internet. If you screw it up, you might as well go home. It's because we all rely on it now. Okay, gives it easy use, scalability, consistency, a lot of stuff with it. Okay, they talk about zones, and hopefully y'all can see that. I don't think it needs to be full screen. They talk about it here, something called a FQD, or fully qualified domain name. So www.google.com is a fully qualified name. Okay, that's a website I can go to. It actually points to a specific machine on the Google domain, which is on the .com top level domain. Here would be another example: computer1.sales.microsoft.com. Okay, that could be another one. Computer1's the host on the sales domain, which is located on the Microsoft second level domain, and the top level domain is .com. Okay, so far so good. So that's how you read a domain name. All right. Here's a hierarchy. We have the root level domain. Does anyone know how many root servers there are? There's 13. That's it. Nationwide, there's only, or not nation, worldwide, there's 13 servers. Okay. A couple years ago, a virus took them offline, took 11 of them offline. So 11 of 13 were dead. Guess what happened? Nothing. The internet worked perfectly. Because the system is that robust that 2 servers can serve the entire world. Because what the top level or the root domain does, it just tells you how to find the others. So if I want to go to, yahoo.com, and I've never been there, I know nothing about yahoo.com. I type in www.yahoo.com. My client machine right here says, I have no clue where Yahoo is. I've never been there. I check my cache. I don't know of it. I look in my host file. It's not there. So I ask my DNS server. Well, in our case, happens to be down the hall. Okay. So I ask the DNS server, hey, I need yahoo.com. My DNS server, first thing it does is, have I ever been there? He's like, nope, never been there. Actually says, am I in charge of it? And it's called authoritative. And it's not. So then it looks if I've ever been there. Then it says, I don't know where this yahoo.com is. So then it asks the root servers. It said, hey, where is .com? Okay? Because you have the .com, .edu, .gov, .au. Now we have .sex, .shop, .everything out there now. But those are top-level domains. So my DNS server asks the root servers, hey, where do I find who's in charge of the .coms? The root servers pass me on to who's in charge of the .com servers. Then I say, hey, where can I find yahoo.com? Then the .com servers would send me over to the Yahoo server. Then I would say, hey, I'm looking for www.yahoo.com, and then they would take care of it. Or in this case, I'm looking for www.microsoft.com. So it's a multi-step process, but all along the way, machines are remembering. Okay. So the first person at Rose State that surfed Google, we asked our server across campus, where's google.com? And our server's like, I have a clue. I've never been there. So it asks the top level domain, which says here's .coms. The .com pointers over to Google. But all in this way, our server is remembering. So our server says, aha, I now know where Google is. So the second person who wants to go to Google, our server can send them straight to Google. Can you imagine if every person who needed google.com actually had to go query the root server? That would be terrible, because it's probably the #1 search site right now. Does anyone remember when all machines pretty much went to msn.com? That was the default homepage for everybody. I don't think it is anymore. But so that's kind of the hierarchy of DNS. We're going to look and see how it actually works. And here we have a resource record, okay, which is information about a particular domain. We're going to see a lot more about that. The top level domains, that's .com, .edu, .gov, I go to lifechurch.tv. Okay. What is lifechurch.tv? What is the TV? Anybody?
Transylvania.
It is. It's Transylvania. It's not TV because they have TV broadcasts. It's actually Transylvania. But people think it's TV. Way back when, when I first got hired here, my email address was kdewey@admin.cc.rose.ok.us. That was my email address. How many times do you think students screwed it up? Every time. So I owned an ISP at the point because I worked for one and I made my own. So I could not get rose.edu because at that point edu addresses were limited to four-year universities. We didn't qualify, we couldn't get one. But CC was available, rose.cc. So I figured, haha, Rose Community College would be perfect. CC is some country out in the middle of nowhere. So I contacted the guy who owned it, and he's like, I'll give it to you, like $20,000. I'm like, what? I said, you don't understand. I'm going to be using this for my school. All right, tell your school they can have it for like $10,000, but I have to have a $10,000 donation. I says, you still don't understand. This is not the school. This is me going to do it. It's Ken Dewey doing this. Well, finally kept going. He's finally going to give it to me for free. Fine, you can have it for free. You just got to pay a $300 transfer charge. I'm like, no, we're done with this. So I didn't do it. Then shortly after that is when we got approved to get rose.edu. So if you're actually to go to the machines in the regular computer labs and actually query the actual domain name, it's admin.rose.cc.ok.us still to this day. So what they did is we keep upgrading our domain. You know, we don't ever rebuild it. It's still, we can use it as rose.edu and it works fine. It's one of those things. We keep upgrading, so it still has that underlying admin.rose.cc.ok.us domain. So it's kind of weird. So top levels, this .coms, .edus, .tvs, so on and so forth. Every country, like CU is China? No. CN is China. CU is Canada. I don't know. Everybody has one. Okay. You have second level domains. That's, you know, the .coms type. I'm sorry. Microsofts and the Googles and the Rose and stuff like that. Then we have hosts. That's the www. So www.google.com means a machine called www on google.com. They actually have multiple machines called www. We'll learn about that here in a minute. Okay? Address resolution. My client contacts the DNS server, says, hey, now I need information about it. So it contacts its DNS server. Like at your house, you guys, your computer, you probably query your router, which then queries Cox or whoever your provider is, and then goes down the line. Okay? Use what's called a recursive query. You ask one, then it goes out and gets information for you. Okay? So, all right? Now, iterative is a little different. Okay? Let's look at the difference for a second. So, recursive, I asked my server asked the next server, then that server keeps going down the line asking each other. Then they all return the response to whoever asked for it. Iterative means I ask my server. My server asks the root server and gets its answer. Then my server asks the .com server gets its answer. Then my server asks the Contoso or the Microsoft or the Google server and gets its answer. So, you know, this is more popular right here. Okay? All right. How to configure them. Okay, first thing I do is install DNS. Okay? I have a project for you all to do, and we're going to walk through one in class. Your homework is basically identical, just some different names. Okay? So we're going to install DNS, we're going to configure it, create some zones, add some resource records, and we're going to use it. Okay, first thing we need to do is add a role. So if you want to walk along with me, that's totally fine. If I can get, why can't I get that stinking window to come up? Which window do I need? Got 18 windows here. There, that's the window I want. All right. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to add a role. Okay. Oh, you already got DNS. We actually installed DNS already. Because when we installed Active Directory, we installed DNS. So you should have it installed. It should be right here. Okay? I'm assuming. Okay? And I know I learned something a while back, but I just remembered the other day. You know how on your phone, like, say I got something up here, and I tap my phone twice, and it brings up the little list of the processes that are running. Y'all know what I'm talking about? At least if you have an iPhone. Do you know those processes are actually just a JPEG the last time the program was running? It is. So these are actually JPEG pictures of the last time that application was running. So you can actually search through the applications in the listing and find pictures of every application someone was running. So even if they close them out, you can still go back and see what application they're running. So it's kind of cool. Windows kind of does the same thing with the whole Alt tab, and it shows you all the stuff. Those are actually JPEGs of it. Okay. So let's go into DNS. We already have DNS installed. Okay. There we go. All right. Now, let me go back to my slide here. So the slide talks about installing it. We've already installed it. It's basically a checkbox, and then you say next. Okay. That's all there is to DNS. Now, if we go over here, we can see it in here, or you can also see it in, where is, we can actually, it's under Tools right here, isn't it? Tools, DNS, yeah. The easiest way to see it is under Tools, DNS right here. So if I click on Tools, DNS, the DNS window will come up, and I'm going to minimize server managers because I really don't need it anymore. Now we have our domain, okay? Looks very similar to the slides, except for the name's different, okay? Every kind of got that? You all should have that already, because you had that already, okay? Now, they start talking about primary and secondary zones. Primary zones are what's called authoritative, okay? You are most likely, at least some of you, authoritative in your family. I'm the man of the house, whatever I say goes, okay? Same thing. A primary DNS record is authoritative for the domain. You can read it, you can write it, you can copy of it, you can do whatever you want to it. You can make changes to it. A secondary zone is a copy of it. Okay? That's like Cameron in my office. He can answer questions about the program, but no one's really going to let him change the program or add or delete. He's basically just telling you about the program. A secondary zone is a copy of it. Okay? Forward lookup basically it says contains most of the resource records, just not all of it, and we're going to see more about that. Okay? And reverse is the opposite. It's the number to name. We always go name to number, but I could actually go over here on my computer, like I typed nslookup.google.com. Y'all see that right there? What it did is it contacted the domain controller down in the end of the hall, and it was vcontroller.rose.labs. Then that one looked up google.com and gave me a number. Okay? Now that's what's called a forward lookup. I gave it the name, it gave me the number. Now I can do nslookup. I'm going to do 164.58.87.49. Okay? That happens to be the last entry on the list. I'm just typing. Yeah, naturally it doesn't exist. Come on. Let me go 8.8.8.8. Explain what that does. Why doesn't it have it in there? We know it's Google, but why isn't it returning one? Let me do this one instead. Oops. There it is. Okay. Google sometimes does weird stuff with their names. They don't always have reverse records. Okay. But here I did nslookup 66210.163.130. I gave it a number, and it translated that number into a name. That happens to be the ISP I used to own. That's why I happen to know the number. So mail.internettext.net resolves to that number, and that number resolves back to that name. So that's the difference forward and reverse. Forward, you give it a name, you get the number. Reverse, you give the number, get the name. Okay? There has to be an entry for it to work, or else you're going to get like that, no entry found. That means it's Google does not have reverse entries for all theirs. They're Google. They don't have to. They can do whatever they feel like. Normally, it's only important to have reverse entries for mail servers. It's not really important for the rest, because very few people are going to contact a web server backwards. They're going to contact mail servers backwards, but not web servers. Okay? Let's move on. Okay. A server can host all primary, all secondary, or some of each. Okay? Very easy. Okay? Primary name servers that host zones. Secondaries are servers that host secondary zones. It's pretty simple. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and create a new zone. Okay? I'm going to go into my machine, which is right there. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to create a new zone. So if you click on forward lookup zone, I'm going to right click in there and say new zone. Okay? You already see I have a couple zones in there. You guys should as well. It's probably rows and some number. Okay? So I'm going to say new zone, and I'm going to get a wizard. I hate wizards. But with a wizard, then I get an option. This is a primary zone, a secondary zone, or a stub zone. We'll talk more about stub here in a second, but primary is I'm the guy in charge of this domain. So we're going to go with that for right now. Okay. Now, where do I want to replicate this thing to? Since we are an Active Directory controller, it's giving them the option to replicate. Everybody along with me here? Okay. What the replication does is it recommends replicating to all domain controllers in my domain. Makes sense. All domain controllers in my domain should know about this record. Okay, so that's fine. If we were not a domain controller, I wouldn't get this screen. It would just default to myself. Okay. So I'm going to say next. Okay, my zone name. Make it for your name. My name is KenDewey.com. Okay? Just put it in there for your name. Okay? So my zone is KenDewey.com. So it should be the name with the extension on it. Okay? Don't put no www, just the domain and the extension. Okay? Now, here is updates. Okay? You can have dynamic updates. Since we're Active Directory, it'll let us update them automatically. Okay? Or we could have now this is kind of funny, but the second option here, allow both non-secure and secure. Over the years I've been doing this, if I've ever had an issue with DNS, Microsoft's fix was always select the second options. Well, if it's not updating correctly securely, then it'll let it update non-securely. Is that a good option? Probably not, but that's always their answer. I'm just telling you, it still is today. So if it's not updating, just allow both. Okay. Well, we're going to allow both today. Just for the hell of it. It's not going to matter any. We're not synchronizing with anybody. But what the updating means are, pretend we were all DNS servers in here. And I was the primary, you guys were all the secondaries. If I made an update, I would tell all of you about it, then you guys would update your records. If we were Active Directory, we would try to do it securely. Now, if that failed, we could do it insecurely. Okay. The problem is if it doesn't update correctly, you might have outdated records. Okay, and DNS is actually very fluid. It gets updated all the time. Like even in Rose State, we're always adding new computers. When I worked at Tinker, I was in the networking shop, and it was funny because they had someone from, I think it was Kelly at the time. It was either Kelly or Kiesler. Came to Tinker to map the network. Once a year, they would come on Tinker and make a map of the network. Well, we were over in building 202 at the time. We were actually running a wire. Literally had the ceiling tiles open, we were running a wire. So they came over to map the network. I'm like, if you hold on 5 minutes, we'll have this wire finished. I'm like, nope, this is a snapshot in time. It's going to be expired in about 1 minute anyway. So they did not include that wire in their update because it wasn't finished. So it was like, why are you even doing it? So it's kind of like a snapshot. It's like Google Street View. Yeah, I've seen a lot. Have you seen the cars yet? Anyone seen the cars? One actually drove by my house when I was mowing my lawn. So if you look at my address, you'll see me out there with a weed eater. So let's make sure it's there. I don't want to lie to you. I hate to tell you a lie here. We're going to go to Maps. But they did update recently, so it might be gone. Alright, let's get to my house. I hate this new look they got here. I'm going to put a little dude out here. No, it's been updated. Damn it. Yeah, this was recent. They were installing my fence. That's when the guy was installing my fence. But when they did it a year ago, if you had gone to this view and looked at my house, I was literally standing right there with a weed eater. Cars even by me. But yeah, this is probably maybe about 4 months old. They installed a new fence for me. But again, it's a fluid thing. They're always updating the pictures. But I've seen those carts everywhere lately. It's like, what the heck? I was right over here by Primo's, on the corner of I-40 and whatever. Zoomed right by me again. It's like, holy crap. Little VW buses, or bugs. All right, so we're going to allow both of them. We're going to click Next. And then we're done. So it's a very simple thing to do. Now, if we open up our forward lookup zone, you will see now we have a KenDewey.com. Everybody got it? Well, you won't have Ken Dewey, but you'll have whatever your domain is. Okay? So let me go back to my slides here real quick. So we added a new zone. We selected primary. We gave it a name. And it asked where to store it. Now, this one is not doing it on an Active Directory server. See, we didn't get this option because it's an Active Directory. It's a little bit different. See, theirs is not an Active Directory controller. Ours is, since we're Active Directory. So it's a couple different questions, but it's basically the same. Okay. Now, they're actually setting up, are they doing a primary or secondary? What is the name of this new zone? Okay, so see, since they're not Active Directory, it's a little bit different, but we're going to go through and look at this stuff anyway. Okay, so let's look at our zone here. Now, inside there, you'll see what's called a start of authority and a name server record. Everybody see those two? Okay. Double click on start of authority. Okay. Maybe not double click. There it goes. Okay. It finally came up. Just took a minute. Okay. And you should see this screen here. Start of authority means this is the master record for the domain. This is going to tell it how it's configured, who to contact, and all that stuff. This serial number is wrong. I don't know why they don't fix it. RFC states serial number should be in the format of year, month, year, day, update number. That's the proper format of a serial number, and I'm going to require you to do that. I'll tell you what it is again. It's year, month, day, and then you can just put 1. That's fine. Okay. The reason is, when a domain record is updated, it's updated based on serial number. So if all of us in here were all managing the same zone, okay, I'm the primary for kendewey.com and you all are my secondaries, okay? What happens is every few minutes, I think it's 15, you guys contact me and said, hey, what's your version number, okay? And I would tell you 2014, 1023, 1 or 01, either way. And then you would look at yours and say, oh, I got the same number. So we're good. So nothing else would happen. Well, if I make an update where I increment it, you'll notice it actually changes to 2. If you click on your increment button, it'll change. To 2, to 3, to whatever. Is yours incrementing? What? You have a question?
So you're supposed to keep that 1 in there?
You can put 1 in there, that's fine. But what happens is, every time you make a change and apply it, it's automatically incremented anyway. So the 1 will change to a 2. The 1 means the first change of the day. Then the 2 would be the second change of the day, and so on. So that way you could have an unlimited number. But the whole point of having the serial number in this format, we can first look at it and know when the last update was made. Okay. We can know how many were made on that day. And if you guys are secondaries, it's very easy to check. Because if we just use regular numbers like the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's hard to tell. With this here, you guys can contact me and you can say, okay, I got 2014, September 18th, 01. And I got 2014, October 23rd. Oh, I'm newer. Obviously, October 23rd is past September 14th. So you would then say, hey, I need the new record. And I would send you the updated record. I don't know why Microsoft doesn't do that. The RFC specifically states that's the format. And when I ran my ISP, every time I created a zone, I had to go out and check it. There's zone testing tools to make sure it's in the proper format. Because if you don't do it right, there's some places that it won't function correctly. If you're trying to transfer zones to somebody, it's not going to work. Okay, so, and then the increment, obviously it keeps going up and up. And what you should do is anytime you make a change, you should update this. So if I make a change tomorrow, if I make another change today, it'll become number 5. But if I make a change tomorrow, it'll be 2014, 1024, then I'll start with 01. Y'all understand how that works? All right. The primary server is who's in charge of this domain. I said I was since I created a primary server, and that should be my fully qualified domain name. It should be your name dot whatever your domain is. KDewey, whatever. Because that's this machine. Okay. Now, responsible person, that is the email address of the person in charge without an @ sign. So this is hostmaster@rose00.edu. Now, in the real world, you would put in a real email address. Okay. But again, you don't use the @ sign. You replace the @ sign with a period. The reason is DNS was originally created on a Unix system. And on a Unix system, the record for DNS actually used the @ sign in the record to identify the certain sections of the DNS record. So it can't be used in an email address. Okay. Refresh, retry. How often is this going to refresh? How often should you check, ask me for updates, that kind of stuff, and expires after, okay? What the expired does is how long is this thing good for? Okay, is it good for 1 hour, 1 day, 1 month? Okay. The way you got to think of expiring is, say I'm in charge of Google.com, okay? How often do you think Google updates their DNS? Domain-wide. Probably every moment or every minute. Because they have so many servers, they're probably changing something all the time. So they would want a very short expiration. Because what happens is your domain controller contacts Google, says, hey, where's www.google.com? And it tells you. Then you remember it for a certain length of time. Okay? Then when that time expires, then you go back and ask Google for another one. So if that expired time is very long, and Google makes changes, you're not going to get the updates. It's kind of like you get a phone. Remember, I actually still get phone. You get a phone book at your house? I actually got a phone book the other day. I don't have a clue why. Does anyone actually look at a phone book? But when they send you a phone book, how long is that phone book valid for? Basically a year until they send me a new one. But how often are those numbers changed? All the darn time. There's always places out opening and closing and moving and changing numbers. So why give me a book that expires after a year, yet the numbers are probably bad the moment you print the book? All right. So we got minimum time to live, which is default to 1 hour. Then time to live for this record again, which is 1 hour. How long is this record before it just deletes itself? Okay. Now, inside it, we also have a name server tab. Okay, I'm the primary name server. You can also add the other name servers. If each one of you were a secondary server in my domain, you would add it in here. You would say, Bobby secondary.com is my secondary, whatever. Okay. So you'd put in the address of the secondary server. And again, the secondary is, if you can't contact the primary, you ask for the secondary, that kind of stuff. Okay, so you just put in the name of it and it'll automatically check the IP address for you. Okay. All right, so we didn't look at the general tab yet. The general tab has, first of all, is it running or not? Is it Active Directory integrated or not? Is it a primary, secondary? We already looked at that. Does it support the updating? And this is a very awesome button, which so many people screw up. Row state is the prime candidate for screwing this button up. Okay. Down here it says to set scavenging or aging of records, click here. Okay. What this does, see, like row state, I don't know if it's wrong now, but for so many, like I get a new computer in my office. Okay. Happened every time. So they give me a new computer, and they take away my old computer, and then they put in my new computer and call it the same name as my old computer. Make sense? So it's 131.01. That's my, BS 131, which is my office. The machine number 1. That's my machine. So they took away my old computer, gave me a new computer, and named it the same as my old, gave me the name of my old computer. The problem was my old computer had a DHCP reservation in there. It had an entry in DNS, had an entry in DHCP. So then they give me a new computer without deleting the old record. It's kind of like they weren't deleting the old phone number out of the book. And it was actually funny because I think it was last fall, I was doing a course, an online course, 5 days long, basically 8 hours a day, and I could not connect correctly for nothing. Well, because they had to allow a firewall entry. They needed to allow a port through there. Well, I was working directly with IT services. They'd allow the port. I couldn't connect. It was going, I'd say for the first quarter of the class, I was actually connecting remotely to my house and then doing the course remotely from my desktop here through my home computer to the course. So it was I was going around. Well, they're like, we're putting the entry in. Why isn't it working? So they're like, you got to be giving me the wrong port. So I'd be contacting the school. No, that's the right port. And we couldn't get it to work. Well, what it was an old record in the system. They were allowing that port for my old computer. I wasn't using the old computer. So once we finally realized that, I'm like, if you just check a stinking box, you solve the whole problem. So if you check this scavenge stale resource records box, it basically says, how often are we going to delete the records? every 7 days. So what that means is if your computer has not been active for 7 days, it deletes the record. Makes sense. You can change it. You can be, hours, days. You can put in, 180 days. Like Tinker actually uses this. And if they're not active on the Tinker domain, I'm pretty sure it's every 7 days they delete them. So they have a lot of people that have to get the computers re-added to the domain. So, I don't know. 7, I would say, is a little short. But you could very easily go for 14 days or 30 days or something. But Rose State would uncheck that box and it would never delete the records. Their reasoning was, no, we don't want to delete anything. Yeah, but if it's an old record that's stale, in other words, it's not valid. Why have an invalid record? So the way every time I figure out, I say, you please go in and check the box and say, okay. Then I'm like, we forgot, and they do it again, and then it fixes the entire problem. So kind of an important box. It's one of those things, if you haven't played with DNS a lot, you won't even know about it. Because by default, it doesn't check it. Because Microsoft would rather not delete anything. Because I could just see if it's automatically deleting stuff, and you're like, why are my records going away every 7 days? And so that's why they don't do it. Okay. So let's go to the Wins tab. Wins, Windows Internet Name Resolution. It was what we used prior to Active Directory. It's what's used on workgroup networks. It's old. It's no longer needed. But still helps. Okay. Sometimes on large domains, like here, if I wanted to connect from this machine here to / file server 1, okay? I'm connecting to file server 1, which is the machine down the hall. I hit enter, and it might find it. I don't know. You'd think it would. But basically, if you do not specify a fully qualified domain name, it asks wins. So it's one of those things that you should have, but you don't really need it anymore. Because most everything is fully qualified domains. I don't know why mine didn't connect to anything. Oh well, who knows. But they just re-imaged these, so I'm not sure. So, but wins, it's for resolving IPv4 to machine names, not domain names. Okay. Zone transfers. Okay. There it goes. Could not connect it. I have no idea why. Because the machine should be up and running. I guess it's not. So, who knows? All right. So, zone transfers. What a zone transfer is if I'm a primary zone and you guys are my secondaries, if this is unchecked, you're not going to get a copy of it. What this is handy for is I used to buy domains from other people. Like you would move, say you're hosting with somebody else and you want Ken Dewey to host your domain. So you contact me and said, hey Ken, I want you to take over hosting my domain. So I would go in at a new zone, like a kendewey.com, for whatever your domain is. Then I would go in and attempt to transfer it. Okay? I would right click on your name, which let me go back in here. I'd right click on here, and since we don't have a transfer in there, it won't work. But normally you can just do transfer. Okay, we just can't because we're Active Directory. See, Active Directory makes it a little bit different. Automatically handles transfers, automatically everything. But in a non-Active Directory area, if you do allow zone transfers, you can say transfer it to anybody, transfer it only to certain people, and there's issues with this. Okay? An issue with this is, okay, what's a very popular domain? Google, makes sense? So what if I was to create a new zone called google.com on Rose State's DNS server? Okay? That means every machine on Rose State, whenever they want to go to Google, who are they going to ask? They're going to ask me, because I have a record for it. So whenever someone at Rose State types in google.com, it's going to ask me, like, oh, you have a record for Google. You must be in charge of Google. So what if I was to transfer a copy of Google Zones to me? That's fine. You used to be able to do that because this wasn't enabled originally. It's like Bind version 4, they finally brought it up. So I transfer Google's records to me. So what that'll do is it'll make Rose State's name resolution to Google very fast. So if anybody wants to connect anything on Google, you ask me, and I already know because I transferred Google's domain to me. So in other words, I got a copy of it. I'm not authoritative for it, but I get a copy of it. So anybody inside Rose State will then ask me. But the problem is, if I'm not listed inside of Google's server, I'm never going to get any updates. Okay? So if Google makes changes, they're not going to call and say, hey, Ken, we saw you transferred our domain. Please update. No, they won't do that. So what happens is you normally will leave that unchecked. The Active Directory automatically does it. Okay? Inside of our domain. But in the real world, if you leave that unchecked, now someone couldn't steal our domain. Someone couldn't just copy Google down here and pretend to be in charge of Google. Years ago it happened. I think it was AOL. There was a big article somewhere. Somebody transferred AOL.com to their server. It's not a big deal. It doesn't hurt anything, except that they didn't get the updates. Because AOL was authoritative for it, so AOL made changes on their own, and the guy who transferred it never got the updates, so then it started causing issues. And so it's best to leave it unchecked. Okay? Or if you check it, only transfers to either the name server tab or the machines listed below. Okay? So, but it's normally best to leave it unchecked. But if it is checked, there's an option down here to notify. This was not originally available in DNS either, but notify does. Okay? So if I'm the primary, you guys are all the secondaries. We saw on that refresh tab, you guys be asking me every 10 minutes for updates. Well, with Notify, I can tell you of updates. It's kind of like, if you got your email now, you can have push notifications, or you can read, like our Rose State Mail can push emails to my phone, or I can pull them from Rose State. Same thing. Notification, I can tell you, hey, I got updates. So rather than wait 10 minutes, you can now get them the moment I tell you. So, it's okay. I actually went to eat at Ron's Hamburgers today. You know where Ron's is? Over by the old Heritage Park Mall. If you've never eaten there, it's excellent. You need to go there. Their tables are advertisements. It's got all the ads on it. And we were in there like a week ago, and they've changed them since then. So we're in there today, and the ads are all different. But they didn't notify me. They didn't call me and say, hey, Ken, we got new ads. Come check out our new tables. But I just happened to go in there. So if there's a new ad, I didn't see it till today. They might have updated it last Friday, and I didn't see it until today because that's when I went in. Notification, they would be calling me, hey, Ken, we're at Ron's. We got new updates. Come look at our new tables, that kind of stuff. So notification goes right along with zone transfers. Okay. Now, security, who can update it? Anybody, everyone. See, normally you let everybody read it. As you can tell, the Everyone tab has the read. I should be able to update. Let's see, DNS admins. There it is. Yeah, I can update and do all that kind of stuff. Okay. But it's everybody can just read it. Okay, so there's all the entries on that tab. Okay. No way I'm going to finish all this today. It's impossible. There's no way. Okay, there's too much information. Okay, let me check what a couple slides are saying here. Okay, excuse me. They're adding a new zone wizard. We haven't got to that part. You see, theirs is even different. We've had an update since then. Okay. We already talked about forward lookups, but there's also reverse lookups, and here they're actually talking about a reverse lookup on this line. Let's go look at reverse lookups real quick. Okay. Here's the reverse lookup tab. That's the number to the name, not the name to the number. Okay. They do have more slides about it, but so if I go into reverse lookup, I'm going to say new zone. Okay. So I clicked on reverse lookup, added a new zone. Then I'm going to click next. Okay. Just like the other ones, am I going to be primary or am I going to be secondary or stub or whatever? So I'm going to be primary. Now I'm going to replicate with everybody. Again, since we're Active Directory, we're getting a couple extra boxes here. And here's the old IPv4, IPv6. That's actually what they're showing you over there. Now, this time, instead of a name, you give it a number. Okay, does anyone know what our IP address is here? How can I find out what our IP address is? IP config, perfect. All right, my IP address is 10.10.40.23. Okay, everybody see that? You can tell by my subnet mask, 10.10 is the network, 40.23 is the host. So I'm going to go over to my new zone record. I'm going to say 10.10.0. Okay, because 10.10 is the network. Actually, I can even put in 40. It'll make it easier. So what this is saying is now I'm going to handle reverse lookups for 10.10.40.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, so on and so forth. Okay. Then I'm going to say next. Oops, sorry, I clicked too fast. Then there's the update tab, and then we're finished. Now, if you look under reverse lookup, you will now see we have the same exact type of setup, but rather than for kendewey.com, we have the domain number, the IP address. Okay. Now, let's look at a couple slides here. So there they are. They're putting in the number. And again, they have a place to store it. We don't because we're Active Directory. But what this is showing you here, where do you want to store a copy of this? Now, if I was to go to my computer again, if I went to C, window, actually, let me do it on the server. I'm doing it on the server. If I went to C, Windows, System 32, DNS, oh crap, hold on. C, Windows, System 32. I can't go straight to, not System 43, it's 32. C, Windows, System 32. Now inside there I should have a DNS directory. I do. And this is where the domain records would be stored if I was not Active Directory. Okay. On the slides they're asking what name to give it. But since we're Active Directory, it's automatically doing it for us. I just want to show you what those look like. Okay. I'm going to open up this one here. I'm going to open this up with, what? Just open with Notepad, will you? Open with, try an app on this PC. Notepad, there we go. All right. This is what a domain, a DNS record looks like. Okay. DNS is based on BIND, which stands for Berkeley Internet Name Daemon, and they mention it down here. That's where it was started all. It started at Berkeley, and who knows what the version is now. But it's BIND version, I guess, did it say what the version is now? I don't know what the version is. But this is what a record looks like. Okay. This is where it lists all my root servers. Remember I told you it was 13 of them? And there they are. There's 13 of them. Okay. They're actual servers. The DNS, or the ISP we bought out in Tulsa, was actually one of the 13 root servers at one point in their life. Okay. See, this one's operated by VeriSign. This one's Nordu. This one's Army.mil. This one's DDN.mil. This is ISC. This one's NASA. So you can see who they are. I don't. Yeah, there should be some samples. Well, maybe. Open with Notepad. Well, okay. This is a sample record. You know all those settings we looked at? Serial number, refresh, retry, expires, and all that stuff? That's how it's actually stored. Even though we're looking at it with a nice GUI, it's actually stored in a text file. Okay? The reason is for that, so it synchronizes correctly. We could have a primary zone that's a Microsoft Windows server, a secondary that's a Linux server. And you need them to work correctly, so they're all stored. And the reason you could not use your @ in your email is because that's actually part of this record, if you notice. You see there's multiple places that are actually using the @. Okay? So it's kind of what it looks like. Again, this is a sample. But if we were not a domain controller, ours would be stored this same way. But since we are a domain controller, we don't get to see them that way. Okay? So that's why the slides are asking, what name would you like to store it under? Okay? All right. Then there's the rest of it. Now this is for an IPv6 domain. We're not doing that one right now. If we were, that's what it would look like. Ours are Active Directory integrated. They replicate automatically with every server in your domain. Each server enables all DNS servers to have authoritative read or write copies. So with Active Directory, everybody gets a copy and everybody can update the copy. Is that a good idea? I don't know. But it does happen. So but the way they think about it is, well, everybody in Active Directory that's on the domain controller is probably an administrator, so they know what they're doing. I don't know if I agree with that. Okay? Benefits. Fault tolerance. If I'm a primary and y'all are a bunch of secondaries, what happens if I crash? You guys have the copies. You guys can still answer all the information. Then all I would have to do do is go to, Melvin's machine over there and uncheck where it says secondary, make Melvin the primary. So since he has an exact copy of it, it will be very easy to fix. So it's fault tolerant. Security, that's what the whole zone transfer thing comes in. And efficient replication, because it updates every so many minutes. Okay. All right, I already talked about who you can update to, all domain controllers, those in your forest, so on and so forth. That's kind of what we already looked at. Okay. You can also have a subdomain. At the very beginning, when they showed an example, it was like server1.support.microsoft.com. Make sense? So Microsoft.com is a domain, but support is a subdomain of Microsoft. Okay. Here at Rose State, we are rose.edu. But we take care of cyber.rose.edu. So we have the rose.edu domain, but the cyber, which is a subdomain of Rose, is our stuff for the cyber lab. Okay? All right. Subdomain, same way. You say new domain, and then you type in the sales, but this way you actually go in there and put in the other domain with it as well. So you're really become, instead of just contosur.com, you're support.contosur.com. Okay? Then you tell it who's in charge. Okay? Now, stub zone is a copy that contains only certain records. Okay? It says it only contains only necessary resource records, allows servers to forward queries, so on and so forth. It's a partial entry. Because you can imagine Google records probably have thousands and thousands of records. So they probably have a few of those. Caching only servers are kind of nice. Okay? Actually, a lot of places use those. What a caching only server is, imagine a server that all it does is lookups. So we have a server, maybe at your work, not really in charge of anything for DNS, but handles lookups. So it goes out and queries Google, it queries Microsoft, it queries everybody, and just keeps a copy of it. So that way, internally, when you ask for something, it knows about it. So nice to have. It receives the request and just stops a lot of internet traffic. Years ago, we were actually limited. I actually took care of a network out at Taylor Valve Technologies, way across town on 74th and Council. Their internet connection at the time was a 56K modem. One modem for the entire company. So you can imagine if everybody was they did UPS and FedEx. That's all they did. So it was fine for that. But can you imagine if every computer in the company had to keep going out and making DNS queries and whatever? Since they had a caching only server, one server went out and got updates, then everybody internally would ask for it. Since they had a very slow connection. But now, internet's it's kind of like unlimited cell phone calls. Does anyone actually not have unlimited cell phone calls? Or actually, does anyone actually make cell phone calls? I really don't make calls much anymore. Is there anybody like that? You don't make many calls? I text a lot, but I don't make many cell phone calls. I look at it as like, woo, you made like 23 minutes this month. It's funny. Okay, so we have caching only. Then we have forwarders. Okay? Did they mention forwarders? They didn't mention forwarders? Okay. Oh, there it is. A forwarder. There it is. Okay. What a forwarder is, it's like a caching server, but I tell it where to go. So maybe at your work, you're not a caching server, but you are, but you're also a forwarder. You would tell that server, hey, anything you don't know of, you go ask, Sam over there. So you would cache everything you learn, but anything you didn't know of, rather than me going out and asking the top level domain controller and the root server and all them, I will forward the request on to Sam. So it works pretty good. Okay. It can improve efficiency and name resolution. Yay! And here's how you configure forwarders and all that. Let me show you where you see that. So we didn't look at that tab. Now we were looking at all the properties of the start of authority record. There's no way we're going to finish this today. It's impossible. So we're going to have to continue it next week. But rather than just looking at the zone, we also have the server up here. Okay? Up at the top where it has your server name, if you go to properties of your server, here's where you'll see which interface to listen on. Are you a forwarder? That kind of stuff. Okay? Advanced. Do you want to do, there's that whole recursive and iterative thing I was telling you about. You can also use it to test. And here's the 13 servers. Remember I said the 13 DNS servers? It's on the root hints tab. What that means is there's 13 of them. So if you don't know of something and you need to find out about it, you ask them. Okay? You can edit them. You can delete them. It was funny because it was a Server 2004, NT server, Microsoft Server 2004. For some reason, there was a glitch where a bunch of them shipped without that caching.dns file I opened a little bit ago, and basically this tab was not populated. So what happened is, if you knew the domain, you're fine. But if you try to connect to like someplace you've never been, like Zimbabwe.something, you didn't know the root servers. So you could never query anything. And it was weird. It would work for normal stuff that you knew of, but once you try to go to a domain you never heard of, you'd never been to before, it would error out. It's because the root server entries never got added. I don't know why. It was weird. It was a certain build of Server 2004, and the fix was download that cache.dns record and update it. It's pretty easy to fix. But okay, under security, come on. All right, again, who can update it? Pretty much the same. Under monitoring, here's where you can test it. I want to try a simple query, and I'm going to say test now. So what they did is went out and made a query. It worked. Now I'm going to make a recursive query. Okay? And that worked. What recursive means, I asked one server, and that one server asked another server and came back and told me. So it's an easy way to test DNS. Okay? Now here's where you get some issues. Logging. If you log all events and you have a very large domain, that's a lot of stuff. Because, if I go to, let me go to a website here real quick. I'm going to go to, MSN.com. It's perfect. Maybe. How many ads are on this page? There's tons. All those links on the sides, all these, every one of those is going to require a separate DNS query. Every entry. So that's hundreds. Remember years ago when they had Roadrunner, then they had Speed Boost? Anyone remember Speed Boost? It's a way you could make your internet faster. What it did is, actually all it did was remember DNS records. All it did. Because back then internet was slower. So when you brought up a page like this, it had to make 300 DNS queries. That's 300 requests over a slow internet. So what Speed Boost did was it would remember them. It would. Who cares what the expired said one day? It remembered them for a month. So next time you go to this page, it's like, oh, I know where this link is and that link is, and so ooh, that's loading so much faster. Yeah, it was just a cache, is all it was. So it was stupid, but it worked because it cached the DNS entries. Okay. All right. So there's event logging. Watch what you do there, and then debug logging. Again, you can log more stuff there if you're having problems. Okay. We didn't even get to the important part, and we ran out of time. So I'm going to stop here. We're going to pick up next time. Is that okay? Homework. I didn't put a due date on it yet. You can go look at it if you want. It's up there on the content page. It's not due yet, obviously, since I didn't cover all the rest of the material. Okay. So we're going to pick up kind of wherever we are now. We haven't added any of the records yet. We added the zones, but not the records. Okay. So we'll finish that up next time. So close your machines off if you would. And we will finish up next. What now? Yeah, you can look at it. Just, it's not due yet because I didn't finish it. But the only thing is I ask is if you do look at it, don't come to class next time and say, hey, can you tell me how to put an entry for ftp.rose.edu? Well, I'll be doing homework for you. We're going to do one, but it's not going to be ftp.rose.edu. It's going to be a little bit different. So, okay? Yeah, you're welcome to look at it, though. All right, let me stop this.